let's keep the little theme going by playing another up close and personal action game with the comic book art style. Was pretty interested in checking this one out, but they didn't really show too much. Just had a small teaser, I think one gameplay showcase, and then release. Still in the dark on what the gameplay is like, but I liked how the wait was long. So let's see what we got here. This is combat overview. Here we go over the general controls, the main mechanics, who or what we use them on, and then seeing how it all comes together. Got our go-to punches doing a 3-hit combo, followed up by a powerful 4th hit. Now landing that 4th hit will do extra damage to their health, build up a good amount of stun, or do damage to their armor if there's any to break down, and knocks them back, which can set up a wall splat. That also does extra damage to everything as well. So already I've thrown a lot of stuff at you. There's a good bit going on here, so let's keep digging. We have ourselves a heavy attack by holding square instead of the taps. It'll do 1 full pip damage to enemy armor compared to the allies chipping away at it, or do solid amount of stun buildup if they have no armor. And yep, it'll do the same send away that can lead into a wall splat. Not only that, but we can hold a direction with the left thumbstick as you're charging up to send them either left or to the right. Of course, can send them into a nearby wall or off a nearby ledge to set up some fall damage. And you can actually follow them by dropping off doing the drop attack, holding square while falling to do this crowd control slam. Now we have some guns to use too. We can only have one equipped at a time though. You do have infinite ammo, but you have to reload it still, which has you pick the right moment to make it count. We start with the pistol. Now it does very little damage, but its main thing is to do major stun buildup. If they have armor though, it won't do much, so you need to open them up first. Now we have a shotgun, basically opposite to the pistol. Instead of building up stun, it's really good at doing damage to the health. Shorter clip size with only 2 shots, but the strength is there, especially the closer you are to the enemy. And lastly, the grenade launcher. Only 1 shot, lengthy reload animation, but does splash damage to a crowd of enemies. Great for crowds of course, but kinda in the middle, dealing equal damage to both armor and health. And it's a bit more tricky to use because after that one-time use, it's really risky to reload it while in the action compared to other weapons. So you really need to make a count with this one. It does set up environmental follow-ups a bit from afar too, which is pretty nice. Now there's also charms. Again, we can only equip 1 at a time and they run on a cooldown. We have this push. It'll clear the nearby area of course, but it'll interrupt attack startups too. And if you notice, it will set up a wall splat too if close enough. Does a little damage to the health but builds up a major amount of stun. And depending on your surroundings can continue the pressure. There's pillars for example, can knock them into it, doing solid stun damage but also some extra on top of that because of the falling rubble. Or sending them off a ledge for fall damage. And they'll follow up with a slam attack and yeah, even more from there. A knife that pierces attacking their health directly. Doesn't matter if they have armor still, the knife will just cut through that. It also interrupts attacks, which is very handy of course. Can combo into it as well before you reach the ender to squeeze in some extra damage too. Pretty stubby though, but can be upgraded to have you teleport to start the pressure. Yeah, this one is starting to become my new favorite. Then a bubble shield that'll eat a single attack. This one I couldn't get into much, it doesn't do any damage and I could just dodge instead. So it seems a bit passable if you're good at using the game's defensive options. Again, might be some cool stuff here I'm missing out on, but that's the cool thing with these guns and charms. You get to make your own little playstyle by mixing and matching. On to defenses. Now a huge part of the game revolves around these side steps, from ducking, weaving left to right, and back steps. And to help out, figure when you should use which. There's shared rules and tells that are the same across the board from all the enemies and bosses. If an enemy stretches an arm to the side, then it's a sweep you want to duck. If they raise anything straight up, it's most likely a slam attack for you to back or sidestep. If it's diagonal attack, you want to sidestep into it because it'll catch you otherwise. And if you see him raise both arms for this cross slash, you want to backstep. But yeah, this whole system kind of reminds me of Punch Out. It's cool how similar it is at times. But yeah, we do have perfect dodges. Wait till the last moment to sidestep, and if you get it, can hold punch to do a powerful follow-up. We'll either do 2 full pips of damage to the armor, or build a lot of stun. We also have a block. Now it'll cost you your armor, chipping at it with every attack you guard. And if you have no more armor, then trying to block attacks will instead cut into your health. Again, kind of like Punch Out's heart system in a way. Of course, we can time a block to counter. It still does damage to your armor, but very little. And trust me, the reward definitely outweighs the little chip damage you'll take. For one, that perfect block pushes that enemy back slightly, just enough to wall splat. So if you can keep them in the corner, then you'll continue that pressure. This will even work on pillars doing its thing. Nice thing is, you can cancel light punches, not the ender or charge attacks though, to go right into the counter on reaction. Same for side steps. Even cancel out of reload animations too if needed. But enemies will toss out some unblockable attacks too. When you see that gray aura around them, then yeah, be sure to sidestep that. Because being hit by these will shatter your armor and deal massive damage to your health. So they like to mix you up with these. But the push and knife charm is a nice way to interrupt these too, if dodging them might be a bit tricky in that moment. So yeah, knowing when to block with either left, right side steps and putting all together using all your defensive options back to back is very satisfying. It's also worth mentioning side steps have no iframes, so it has you reposition yourself to avoid these specific hitboxes. Again, which really gives off this punch out kind of feel, which is pretty cool to see. And don't worry, there's no cheap magnetized tracking on enemies' attacks. If you dodged it correctly, then you dodged it. Looking at the HUD, these red segments are health. The yellow pips is our toughness or armor. Like I mentioned before, these are the first line of defense to those attacks. But once gone, then it's our health being cut down. It does recover slowly over time though. Right above this is payback. It's one of our most powerful attacks that bypasses enemy armor, so it can deal direct damage no matter what. Can be easily comboed into, has full iframes, and interrupts their attacks too. Or if you don't lock onto anyone, it'll instead do this crowd control slam, sending everyone flying, which can lead into even more extra environmental damage. It doesn't build up by landing attacks, it builds up when you take damage. Acts like a comeback mechanic pretty much. So if you're getting tossed around, then it'll help you out a bit. But if you're skilled enough, counters also add to it. But again, counters cost a tiny bit of your armor, so if you have the wiggle room with resources and confident in your timing, then you'll gain access to a massive attack. Speaking of meters, enemies have the same toughness armor going on too, how it'll protect their health. We can break it down by landing punches, the ender does extra damage towards that, so does that perfect dodge attack follow-up, environmental setups, and yeah, quite a few ways to go about that. Now once we've opened them up, leaving them defenseless, not only is their health in danger, but now we can build their stun. It's that yellow bar underneath their health and armor. Similar to fighting games, once it's maxed out, they will be dazed, left wide open. Now this leads into a unique follow-up. Go up to him and hold punch to deal massive damage, but also sends him flying across the room. But you don't want to just send him anywhere. You want to send him into the environment. So try to reposition yourself to send him into pillars, for example. That splat damage, plus the falling debris will cause even more damage to him on top of that. Literally. Or off ledges for the fall damage, which leads into the drop attack if you want. And of course into walls for the extra splat damages, more than fine. Just as long as you aim yourself to send enemies into other places to get the biggest punish possible, depending on the arena. And cool thing is, it does have full iframes, knocks back any nearby enemies, and does a bit of damage to anyone along the way. Stunned enemies do recover eventually, so you need to be quick enough to see what's in the room and figure out a plan to get the most damage. Since we mentioned them, let's look at some enemies. There's little minions running around. They don't do much, but be a little nuisance just to chip away at you, but they're very weak being one-shotted, but they do drop armor refills if needed. Now the real combat happens one-on-one. Swordsmen that'll try to do some tricky backhand attacks can still tell it's a horizontal swipe, and if they do this little spin, then it's an unblockable diagonal attack. Or one with a mace, or any one-handed weapon really. They'll pull back before doing a forward poke. You can either duck or sidestep or counter. The side swipes, and yeah. A sword and shield version, they will hunker down guarding your attacks. Cool thing is, you can sidestep and punish them by hitting their sides. And doing this actually saves your place in your current combo for some dodge offsetting kind of stuff, which lets you dish out that powerful ender. Large brawlers, stretch the arm out to the side for a sweep, the diagonal attacks for you to sidesteps, they can also be countered, they'll pull back before doing this straight jab, and a blockable slam that can be sidestepped. And yeah, as you can tell, these guys are pretty aggressive, but will try to catch you off guard however they can, so be ready. Then a witch. They have no armor and little health. They're more of a support type, hanging back to toss out smoke. Makes things very hard to see, but if you can keep the pressure on them, they'll stop that from happening. Scientists will toss this Val, buffing one enemy, makes them more aggressive and hit a lot harder too. I think their stun even recovers extremely fast. But they do the usual stuff, has a cross slash that you can counter, the diagonal attacks, and this push away to get you off of them. Also, whenever an enemy does that, they usually want to recover armor soon after, so I'll quickly shoot them to build our stun. And it's pretty cool how each area has their own unique looking enemies based on that theme. Again, they still follow the same rules with their attack patterns, so it might come off as a reskin, but I like that consistency, and thought it was still pretty fun. There's only one mini boss, which are these robots with everything we've learned along the way keeping you on your toes, and each area has their own boss at the end too for you to take on. The usual tells apply here too, so if you keep an eye out, then you'll do just fine. And the final boss you won't see for a while, because with how the story is set up, we have to take down each area individually, fight the boss, and we return. Once we've done that, we gotta revisit the areas again, one by one, but remixed, having those later enemies show up a lot sooner for more of a challenge. Once we beat the boss again, it actually continues past that. Now we gotta find these pillars to break, which has us go through a gauntlet to fully finish this area. Now after that, we need to do that again, but this time with no stops in between. We need to beat each and every remixed area back to back in one run. This is our true challenge to reach the final boss, which has similar attacks to the mini boss, little anticlimactic, but the intensity is still there. Because hey, we just had to go through this gauntlet back to back difficult areas to just get here in the first place. Really stay on top of our game while working with this little build of ours. And that's Hellboy Web of Wyrd. Now this is way more of a beat 'em up than what we just saw with Mad World. We're the ones doing the damage. The bob and weaves, doing our best not to get hit, and to maintain our limited resources while brawling with all sorts of enemies to break them down. You can use the environment to help out in those situational setups, rewarding your stage awareness with the fall damage, wall splats, sending them into pillars, using your sub weapons to the best of their abilities. And since they all have their own pros and cons, it makes those moments even more unique because of those neat little playstyles you can create for yourself. And I probably should have mentioned this earlier, this is a roguelite. Start off with your own weapon of choice, pick your startup passive, pick up some coins along the way, then sprinkled throughout you pick up buffs. You can either pass them up or place them on either fist, charm, or gun. You can level them up if you stack them on the same slot. But yeah, really the usual stuff with most roguelites. Go to a randomly generated set of rooms tied together by hallways. Some rooms will lock you in, having to clear everyone out before moving on, or just run past them, if you really wanted to. But that's the risk reward of roguelites, right? Want to take on more fights for more rewards, or pick and choose those moments where you can have more resources for later down the line. There's even optional challenges in some rooms to pick up some XP from permanent upgrades or some more buffs. There's also some random shops for you to find. You can spend that currency here to either heal up or buy a new passive or upgrade your current ones. It's worth spending this stuff since it resets per run. But the other one is your XP that carries across multiple runs for permanent upgrades. No new attacks, but can increase your max health, your toughness, better the follow up to stunned enemies, build more meter, perfect blocks, and so on. You can even upgrade your sub weapons too, letting them do their job that much better. But yeah, it's just about playing with what you have, trying to be consistent with those tools and adapt to the set of enemies in this battle arena to get a bit further than before for some quick pick up and play arcadey fun. And the XP that you keep after a run for some little upgrading along the way, for some tangible improvements to go along with your knowledge of the game's mechanics and enemy patterns too. And yeah, the moment to moment gameplay is pretty damn solid, I think. Enemies have very clear windups with consistent rules for everybody. And yeah, having the bob and weave between them like it's Punch Out. There's even some risk reward plays here too, waiting for the last moment. If you have the resources, you can go for a counter to do extra damage while gaining meter, and yeah, maybe set up a wall splat too if the situation calls for it. Then the sub weapon with their own strengths in a few ways and all that good stuff. If that sounds pretty fun, then yeah, definitely check this out.